Certain fragrances really require you to wear them on skin, and this one is definitely one of them. Hello, welcome back to Seldomly Off, and I'm Daniel. Today we're talking fragrances, and this is a practical review of Papillon Anubis. These reviews are for fragrances that I have a lot of experience with, multiple wears in many situations, and are meant to give you a general idea of what it feels to wear the fragrance. As per usual, I do a lot of research before buying fragrances, but I don't really like to go into details about notes and accords, as I don't think that they help the end user. I'd rather talk about the wear experience as a whole. This one is a little bit of an unusual situation. I usually take my time to review fragrances. I want to put in a lot of wears. And I just got this relatively recently. I got this around Christmas time, but I've been wearing the crap out of it. I've been wearing it so much, I've been enjoying it so much that I really feel ready to discuss this fragrance and to give you my thoughts about it. I bought this together with Salome from the same house, and I actually filmed a video unboxing on this. It came out, I think, mid-January, something like that. In there, you can see my first impression reaction to the perfume. I initially sprayed it on a strip, and I wasn't too impressed. Then when I went back and sprayed this on skin, I was completely blown away by how much it had changed. This is an amazing fragrance, and as I teased in the intro, it's one of those fragrances that really need to be sprayed on skin to really get the full effect. They really bloom on skin. They have so much facets. It's incredible. It's an incredible difference. Not all fragrances do that. This one here is definitely one of those though. I'm fairly new to the UK house of Papillon. As I mentioned, Liz Morris is the owner and the perfumer. And the house of Papillon has quickly taken off recently, specifically in the world of niche perfumery. A lot of people started talking about Anubis, a lot of people started talking about her other fragrances. I feel that Anubis is arguably the most popular from the brand. If you research on Fragrantica and Parfumo, this one here is the one that with most reviews, most hits. I feel that it's pretty objectively liked, pretty universally liked. Again, this is a very niche house. I would almost call it ultra niche. And ultra niche houses are, to me, those houses which really focus on creating, well, they're manned first and foremost by very few people. Usually the perfumer is even the person that bottles the stuff, that does the marketing, that takes the pictures, etc. But they really focus on creating fragrances based on a very clear idea, very clear execution. And oftentimes, like in the case of Liz Morris, or in the case of Andy Tower for Tower Perfumes, the fragrances that are created are mostly there to appease the perfumer itself. They create fragrances for themselves and then they share it into the world. This one here is definitely one of those cases. I seem to recall that the history behind this is that Liz Morris was creating a perfume for herself and went through many iterations. Even the name Anubis was assigned well after the perfume was finalized. And she kind of noticed that a lot of the raw materials, a lot of her inspirations were coming from her love for Egyptian mythology. And she figures she would call it Anubis, maybe because of the density of the scent, maybe because of the resemblance towards the mummification materials themselves. I don't know. I don't know exactly the full story. I've heard a lot about it in Ramsey's review with Liz Morris, which I highly recommend. Interesting stuff. She seems like a really relatable, down-to-earth person. I really like her style. This fragrance here is definitely an encapsulation of her love for perfumery in general, just her love for the details. It's such a beautifully well put together product. I cannot but applaud her effort on this. For anyone not in the know, Anubis is an ancient Egyptian deity. He is the guy that is usually portrayed with a black jackal head. He is often associated to death. He is not necessarily the god of death, although he is involved with death. And the interesting part about Anubis and why I like his figure so much is that Anubis is usually portrayed in Western media as this evil god, because maybe he's associated to death, but he's not at all. He's just a facilitator. He's like a mind your own business type of god. I really like this aspect because he's so chill, he's so tranquil. There's an aura of serenity and just kind of like calm judgment about Anubis. And this fragrance actually is calm in that way. It's not shouty, it's not loud, it's not over the top. This is a very serene, very ancient type of fragrance. And actually the ancient aspect will be the thing that I'm going to be leveraging when I'm going to be talking about my options. So stay tuned for that. In any case, to me, Anubis, despite it being labeled as a very rough, almost animalic leather fragrance, to me comes across as very enveloping, very calming, and very relaxing. Some say that it perfectly depicts ancient Egypt. I do agree in some ways because it does feel, again, it feels ancient, it feels traditional, it feels a little bit rustic and primal, but at the same time, it feels so sacred in a way, and I really like this aspect. This is one of the most wearable leather fragrances in my collection, and that's why I've been wearing it so much. It's really not fatiguing. But we're going to talk about the wear experience and scent profile after we cover the presentation. Presentation wise, Papillon fragrances are a little bit of a mixed bag. From afar, these bottles look amazing. The squared off design is super elegant, nice and simple, direct, straight to the point. I like it a lot. But once you get close, things start falling apart, and the printing on the bottle is a little bit hit or miss. It's a little bit chipped, not super high quality. The cap is rattly. I already covered this in my unboxing video. It comes off super easily. It feels a little bit cheap and plasticky. This sort of a metal collar is rattly. Everything is just like a little bit parts bin. I'm not a huge fan of that. The atomizer itself is also not that great. It sprays in a very simple manner. Again, a little bit parts bin special here. Let's give it a couple sprays. I've been wearing this as my scent of the day. It's an absolutely gorgeous scent, so that's what matters ultimately. The glass of the bottle itself is also not that great. You can see the seams very clearly. There's a little bit of a slight imperfection on the glass. It feels a little bit corrugated, not super transparent. I don't know, the presentation overall feels a little bit homemade, and sometimes I refer to this homemade presentation as charming in a way. This feels a little bit cheap. It feels kind of like Francesca Bianchi's presentation, cutting corners, cutting costs. That all being said has a very positive outcome because price-wise, these fragrances are priced very well. They're quite competitive. You can buy these for about 150 bucks where I live, and I feel that for the quality of the liquid you get, for the amount of liquid you get, it's very reasonable. The price per ml is actually very similar to the Francesca Bianchi fragrances, so that's super great. Those are some of the better and most affordable fragrances on the market. I also know that Liz Moores is very price conscious. She really wants to keep the price as low as possible to make her fragrances available to the widest public possible. And I really applaud that. I really appreciate that type of approach. The Papillon fragrances are very difficult to find in my area, basically impossible to find. I never seen them at discounters. I'm not even sure you can get these at discounters. They are fairly artisanal, low volume brands, so you might have to pay retail and get them from the brand directly. Okay, time to talk about the scent profile and wear experience for Anubis. What does this actually smell like? Anubis, in short, is pretty much a leather fragrance with very warm aspects that come from ambery facets, maybe a little bit of incense, myrrh. There's a slight floralness to the whole thing that gives it almost a chypre construction or chypre impression. It never really goes there because it lacks the bright, very zingy top notes that really categorize chypres. This one here is a lot more heavy. It's a lot more mid-centric. Liz Moore has definitely pulled off some magic on this one. She managed to put together these relatively heavy ingredients, heavy on their own that is, into a concoction that wears surprisingly light, way lighter than you would expect. And this is part of the charm of Anubis. This makes it super wearable. It's really nice. It's really, and that to me is what makes it so sacred smelling, so ancient smelling. There's a definite and very detectable dryness to this whole scent that really underlines how ancient it smells. It feels like an ancient artifact, something that has a layer of dust on it. You're just like discovering in a tomb. You're just like brushing off and everything comes to life and you see the golden hues under it. It feels so refined, so elegant in a way. It's never shouty, as I mentioned before. It's never in your face. It's very smooth, very well put together. It's super unique wearing. I really like this, and it's just a charm to wear, and that's why I've been wearing it so much, and I've put a distinct dent in here. You don't really need many sprays of this. This is deceptively subtle. This was initially one thing that I was complaining about to myself. I thought, well, you know what? I want it to be a little bit more punchy and more in your face. But then I really came to appreciate this aspect because, again, this is a very elegant, very subtle, very refined type of scent, and it feels ancient. And this ancient, relaxing, meditative aspect would completely fall apart if the scent was super projecting and super shouty. Every time that I apply this fragrance, the first thing that I'm getting is a lot of dry incense. It's a very wispy, very smoky type of incense. It's not burnt whatsoever. There's no bitterness to it. It's just a very light, dusty incense, almost like the dusty ash which is left over from the incense. It's a very dry type of residue. Immediately after, you start picking up on this leather component. Technically, it's more like suede, apparently. I don't really differentiate between the two, but this one here comes across as a little bit lighter, not as deep, not as oily. It has a definite fluff to it. It has a velvety type of texture. I'm talking about your usual suede type of texture. It's a little bit rough. It's a little bit primal. It almost feels unfinished. This is also one of the aspects that leads to this ancient type of imagery, because really refined, really polished, really oily leathers are more of a thing of the modern times. It's through the process of tannings and multiple tanning sessions at that. The leather in here feels a lot more like an animal hide that has barely been washed. It has maybe been stripped from the full grain top, so you have this, again, this suede feeling. It feels like the best of what Egyptian could pull off in a more systematic, sustainable way. It's really cool. It's super unique. It's really captivating and definitely image provoking. This is one of the more transported scents of this type that I've ever smelled. It brings you to this peaceful beige or orange type of feeling. It's very, very serene. You almost look at it through this glass, almost like a spectator. I love photography and I love shooting uncomfortable and annoying to operate cameras. The more annoying, the more niche, the better. I guess it's just a trend in my life. And the camera that I've been using a lot recently is a view camera. It's a very old-fashioned, clunky wooden camera. And every time I get under that fabric to shoot a picture, I get bombarded by the smell of this really rough, rugged cotton from the fabric itself. I get the wooden lacquer smell. I get a little bit of a dusty, musty smell because the thing has been probably sitting in an attic for God knows how long. But it's the gesture itself, the capturing something in an old style, that really brings me to this perfume. Again, this kind of makes me feel like an archaeologist at the start of the 20th century, just taking a picture of some sort of ancient relic in Egypt. The sun is beating outside, there's a lot of dust, there's a lot of moody, I don't know, Indiana Jones vibes. This is a scent that I would associate to an Indiana Jones movie, like Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's really evocative, really beautiful. I love it for that. And I actually wore it while watching the movie. It fit perfectly. This dusty incense and this really dry, crackly leather is a little bit moistened up by some sort of a resin, some sort of a balsam. Maybe there's a little bit of myrrh in here, or some sort of a balsamic type of resin in here. It gives it a twinge of greenness. It gives it a little bit of freshness. Maybe it's what it's elevating the fragrance a little bit from the base. I'm not really sure. It's a very complex, very fine, nuanced fragrance overall. Really interesting to wear. It's such a nice experience, and every time I wear this, I get more and more out of it. Still to this day, every time I wear it, I get a little bit more. I get a little bit more understanding, and I explore this dream scenario of archaeology just a little bit further. It's beautiful. I've tried to wear this in multiple situations. I've wore it to the office, no problems there. Everyone seemed to like it. I mean, I didn't get any comments as per usual, but this comes across as, again, very subtle, very elegant. It has a distinct, gritty, manly type of feeling, although this is completely unisex. On me, it comes across as a little bit manly. I even tried to wear this to the gym because of the reports of this being very, very changing according to temperature. Ramsey said that in high heat, you really get a lot of jasmine from this. I don't get any florals whatsoever. Maybe it's my skin, maybe my skin completely devours the scent. I don't know what it is. I get just leather and leather facets and these beautiful ambers and resins that really accompany the whole composition. Other than that, I wore this out in the evening on my day-to-day activities. This is perfectly suited. It's super subtle and people need to come really, really close to perceive it. Overall, the wear experience is very beautiful. It just accompanies you throughout the day. Not super loud, really finely tuned. I really like this fragrance. I love wearing it, and I really applaud Liz Morris for how she beautifully put together such a very balanced composition. As I mentioned at the start of the video, you really need to wear this on skin to get the full effect. If you wear it on strip, or if you sniff it on strip rather, or if you wear it on textile and clothes, which I don't recommend because this stains clothes, you really get half of the experience. A lot of the body, a lot of the presence of the fragrance just basically gets cut out. There's something about this that really needs the warmth of skin. It really needs the scent of skin to develop and to really show its true colors. I love fragrances that are designed like that. It's such a unique experience because it will smell differently on every person. And if you're the type of person that doesn't like to spray on skin and tends to spray on clothes, this might be not the fragrance for you. It's that stark of a difference. So sample first. You really need to try this out, and you really need to see if it suits your style. Quickly going back to the wear experience, Anubis, as I mentioned, does not really evolve much top to bottom. And from the initial spray to the deepest of dry down, which starts occurring at hour, I would say about 4, what really happens is just that the scent becomes a lot smoother. The gritty, very texturized leather becomes a little bit smoother. These resins kind of take over, just like soothe everything out. They really humidify, and they really bring back a little bit of suppleness to this leather and to the overall feeling. The scent opens up very, very dry, as I said, very dry and dusty, and the scent slowly gets absorbed by your skin, literally and figuratively, because this is one of those fragrances that really becomes one with your skin scent. It really becomes part of you. Some fragrances tend to sit on top of your skin like a layer, like a powder, or like a fog, or like an oil. This one here really gets absorbed. Your skin smells like this. It's such a unique type of thing. Not many fragrances do that, and I really do like this aspect of this because it doesn't really smell like a fragrance. It's like you that pick up this smell. It's such an interesting take on fragrances, and that is probably why this really needs skin, because if it doesn't get absorbed, it just stays that dry, kind of like half-baked bun. And yeah, it really needs some oil, it really needs some warmth to really fully develop. Talking about practicalities, I feel that Anubis is a little bit middle of the road. When it comes to performance, it's pretty good. The longevity is excellent. It's easily 8 to 10 hours, very, very long lasting. The projection is subtle, objectively. It's subtle, it's elegant, it's really well refined, and again, it aids to that sense of tranquility and ancientness. I feel that the projection curve is very, very well tuned though. Although subtle, this really slowly and very gradually turns into a skin scent, and that really occurs only when the fragrance is fully absorbed by your skin, as I was talking about before. This is one of the more beautiful, well-balanced wear experiences out there. It starts subtle, but it also stays subtle. It's very beautiful, very, very elegant. When it comes to use cases and versatility, Anubis is, again, a little bit of a mixed bag. This is a fairly abstract fragrance. And when I say abstract, I mean that this is not your typical perfumey, smell good type of fragrance. Yes, it is beautiful. It's very, very captivating, very mysterious. I feel that this is more designed to be like an experience, maybe to have you experience a part of ancient Egypt. To me, this is more about experiencing a very relaxing, traditional, historic, and ancient type of ritual. It's very, very beautiful, very calming. That being said, I do feel that if you like this scent, if you can approach this scent, and if you feel like wearing it, this could be almost signature scent worthy in the colder months. You could probably wear this also in the warmer months just because it's relatively subtle. Again, it wears close to the skin, very beautiful, but it could be a little bit animalic and stinky. Speaking of animalics, the stinkies in here are super well tamed and not that bad at all. So much so that I didn't even mention it in the wear experience part of this video. And the leather is there, obviously, but it's never barnyardy, never too weird and animal-like. It's very, very elegant. And this makes this fragrance extremely suitable for evening, very elegant type of events. You can even wear this to dinner because it's so subtle, it sits close to the skin. It never really steps on anyone's toes, it never really invades anyone's space. This is a beautiful company for a very serious yet elegant type of evening. You could probably pull this off on your day-to-day activities because it does transition well to casual. The only thing that might not work is the general vibe of this. It's very relaxed and meditative, at least to me, and it doesn't really suit my do stuff days. If I have a lot of stuff to do and to accomplish in a day, this will kind of like hold me back and it will make me want to relax and chill out. So again, your mileage may vary. This is the kind of atmosphere that I'm getting from this and that I get from other leathery fragrances such as Amouage Silver Oud. When it comes to demographics, I feel that this is pretty universal. First of all, it's absolutely unisex. Anyone could wear this. You have to definitely be a fan of a little bit more gritty, a little bit more primal smelling fragrances. Other than that, pretty much anyone could wear this. Age-wise, this really transcends age. It's so abstract, so unique, so niche that if you're into niche perfumery, you might just love it. And even if you're not into niche, you might even dig it because it's so weird and mysterious. This is not a wow-inducing fragrance when you smell it in a shop, and that's reflected in my first impression when I unboxed this thing and I sprayed it on strip. It's really not wow-inducing. You have to experience this multiple times on skin to really get what this is about. When it comes to imagery, narration, and storytelling, Papillon Anubis is exceptionally good. It really transports me, not necessarily to ancient Egypt, but to those times where these ancient Egyptian artifacts were being discovered. Again, I can't really disassociate this from the Indiana Jones Raiders of the Lost Ark movie and that sort of vibe in general. The early 20s to 30s from the 1900s, it's very iconic period, maybe because it's so portrayed in media, in movies, and I have that strong association to Indiana Jones. I watched all of the movies, I grew up with that stuff. This is a super fun scent. It really brings me back to that, and it perfectly suits that mood. I really like this, and although I associate it to those action-packed movies, this actually comes across as a lot more relaxed and meditative. But maybe I'm just thinking about me watching those movies. To me, those movies are pretty much comfort food. And again, I so enjoy watching them in a very calm evening, and this perfectly suits that vibe. Okay, we're at the part of the video where I give you some options for the fragrance I'm reviewing. In the case of Papillon Anubis, I really did not want to go the simple, predictable route of showcasing other leather fragrances. That's a little bit boring. So I decided to leverage that ancient feeling that some fragrances give me. The first fragrance that I want to showcase is Eau Sacree by Heeley. This one here does not bring me to ancient Egypt or anything like that, but this really gives me a very ancient feeling of a church. This is probably the most churchy incense I own, the most realistic churchy incense I own at that. It doesn't really add any sort of flair to the incense. It's a very pure incense smell. Very smoky, very deep. It smells traditional, it smells ancient, not necessarily old, but ancient, like an ancient ritual that has been portrayed and has been replicated throughout millennia. This smells like I'm watching something happening, like a ritual happening in a very dark church with like rays of light. It's very sacred. The name fits it perfectly. Eau Sacree. It's a really interesting fragrance. I love wearing this. It's not as long lasting as I would hope it was. I have a lot of incense fragrances. I'm an incense junkie. This one here is one of the more beautiful incenses in my collection, although it's one of the more simple ones. Again, the simplicity of this really brings me to those ancient times. I like it a lot. I do not recommend it though. I can't recommend people go out and blind buy this just because of the sheer amount of incense fragrances that are on the market. I have some which are a lot more interesting, a lot more accessible, and just more nuanced. This one here though, it's special, has this very beautiful texture to it. It has this very rugged, primal texture. Again, ancient. The second option that I want to present is a fragrance that I think I showcased relatively recently. This one here is Amber Kiso by Durga. I'm not selecting this for the incense notes or for the notes in general for this, but it's more about the imagery that this gives me. This gives me the imagery of a very quiet, very serene, very traditional Japanese home or Japanese temple in the middle of the forest. I love this fragrance, by the way. I absolutely love it. It's so deep, it's so rich, it's so potent, super long lasting, very fun to wear. My God, this thing is absolutely insane. Anyway, but again, the image that I'm getting is of this temple in this maple forest with these leaves almost falling in slow motion, covering the ground, covering the rocky stones of the path up to the temple. Everything is super quiet, very, very serene. In the background, you kind of get this image of this like burning incense just like wafting through the air. Everything is just so static, so again, ancient, not necessarily in the same way, but the thing has been sitting there for so long. It's been established, you know, it's protected and it's cherished, it's cared for, and it's revered. This is the type of fragrance that really gives me that sort of feeling, gives me a feeling of serenity, of security. It's there, it stays a long time. It has this really reassuring, really enveloping, very beautiful and almost serene type of feeling. I love wearing this. It has the perfect combination of roughness to elegance to smoothness. This is definitely one of the best fragrances from the Durga line, easily one of the longest lasting. It's super wow inducing. I highly recommend you get your nose on Amber Kiso. My last fragrance is my usual oddball. Despite that, this is very, very evocative. It smells very timeless and very ancient. This one here is Côté Maquis by L'Object. I got this recently. I wasn't even aware of this brand, and I doubt you guys know about this brand. This is super niche. They have just a couple fragrances out there. It's relatively new, I feel. And this one here I got in a trade. I wasn't even sure about what this was or anything like that. I read some reviews. It appeared to be some sort of a smoky marine type of incense, similarly to Copper Azur. I was scared about that because I do hate redundancy. Actually, this smells nothing like Copper Azur, or rather, it smells similar because it has a smoky, salty note to it, but it represents a completely different thing. And actually, apparently, Côté Maquis is this specific shrub that populates the coast of Central California and even the coast of the Mediterranean. And this specific shrub is a very hardy type of plant, and it lives in this very harsh environment full of sun and salt. It kind of enjoys being sprayed with salt and being baked by the sun. But that is actually not the image that I'm getting when I smell this. I'm not that familiar with that specific shrub. What I'm getting from this is highly connected to the woody aspect of this fragrance. I get this image of this basically dead tree, like on the coast. There's definitely some sea air around it, but this dead massive tree that is sitting there on the coast, and it almost feels like the dead carcass of an olive tree or something like that. It's very knotty. It's bleached by the sun, bleached by the salt. It has a very rough yet smooth texture. It's all cracked up, and this ancient feeling that I'm getting from this fragrance is strongly associated to the image of that tree. The tree has been sitting there for millennia. It's been enduring the sun, the sea salt, the storms, the weather, everything. Nothing has shifted it. It just died by natural causes. It's just so incredible how nature sometimes can withstand all this battering, all this roughness, and just sit there unfazed. This fragrance came out of nowhere, again, in a trade relatively recently. I still have to spray this a lot. I still have to give this a lot of wears to really understand what this is about. But first impressions were strong, really cool stuff. I really like the imagery. And yeah, this is an interesting brand. It just, again, came out of nowhere. Who knows, you know? I love discovering new stuff that I haven't been aware of. Cool stuff. I don't necessarily recommend it because I haven't worn it enough. I don't know about the other fragrances in this brand. If you know anything about L'Object, if you have any experiences with the brand, please leave a comment down below. I'm really curious to see if anyone else has a clue about this. But going back to Anubis with my final recommendations and overview, this fragrance is really good. I really like it. Again, I got it recently, but I've been putting a ton of wears in it. And it perfectly strikes the balance between fun, evocative, yet very wearable, very subtle and elegant. This is basically one of the most perfect design fragrances out there, some of the best fragrances that I've smelled recently. I have to really applaud Liz Morse for this. She clearly put in a ton of work into this, and it shows. She poured her mind and soul into this. And again, I really like it when perfumers are so passionate about something, they're so passionate about the art, that they basically disregard any sort of external input, and they really focus on making the best product that they had envisioned. I value ideas, I value intent and execution, as you all know. This one here is probably one of the best fragrances that really encapsulates everything I love about perfumery, everything I love about this sort of art style and art in general. It's a masterpiece. I like it a lot. I love wearing it, and I plan to wear it a lot more. I just wish that there were more perfumers out there with the same mindset, less commercially focused, less focused on social media and trends, more focused on the art and language of perfumery. If you like this type of content, if you like my approach to video, feel free to subscribe. It's always massively appreciated and it helps the channel. If you want to interact with me, leave a comment, suggestion, or anything else down below. I always reply and I always keep the conversation open. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for your time. It's never taken for granted. Many more videos to come as per usual. See you in the next one and cheers.